All right, guys. So this Deegan bike claiming drama, I'm we're all probably tired of it by now. But at the same time, there's been some accusations and some stuff, and I felt like I wanted to reach out. And I talked to Derek Harris. He's the motor builder who's been accused of certain stuff, which I don't think he's done. And I want to give him a chance to tell his side of the story. So without further ado,
I'm in the empire business.
Everybody love everybody!
You all know exactly who I am.
here is Mr. Derek Harris. What's happening, dude?
Hey, nice to see you, Chris.
So how's your week been? Anything going on?
Man, I've been busy. I'm always busy, so I'm working my butt off. I'm in the shop today. This is a porting room for me. So it's been interesting to say the least. I've gotten a million text messages and messages from just people all over the place. But at the end of the day, for me, just grinding as usual. I just got to get work out the door.
Yeah, so let's tell people first off who you are and how you wound up wrapped up in this situation.
Man, that's kind of a long answer, I would say, but my name's Derek Harris. I run a company called HP Race Development. We build mod engines and stuff like that for primarily amateur racing. We've had some pros and stuff like that. And I got wrapped up in this, kind of goes a long ways back, I think, is at Freestone, I met the Schofields for the very first time. Now, they had been a client of mine the previous year through a referral, but I'd never actually met him. I couldn't have pointed him out in a crowd or anything like that. And I went and met him. He gave me a race engine, or he gave me a stock engine out of a bike to build into a mod motor. And he's like, hey, come by the truck and would love to meet you. So I go over there, and then Brendan comes out and he's like, hey, I need that motor to run with Hayden Deegan's bike. And I'm like, well, I think we can help you out there. I said, but dude, if you wanted me to do that with the Star Racing Pro motor, there's no hope on that. That's the best motor in the industry right now. And he's like, well, what are you talking about? I'm like, dude, that's not a pro bike. And so I think he just was like, there's no way this guy's what he's talking about. And I'm like, yeah, all these teams know there's a claiming rule and you can buy any bike on the line. Have you noticed that his bike doesn't have coated suspension, doesn't have the coated forks, it doesn't have all the things a pro bike has. And I said, and it doesn't sound the same, at least in my opinion. I did not know that. I think that kind of got this snowball rolling. And I probably met them for about 5 minutes at the time, took the motor back to the shop and, hadn't seen him since then. And then roll up to Loretta's, deliver an engine, and we're talking in BS in a little bit. And he makes it clear to me kind of what he's got planned. And I'm like, wow, like this is an interesting deal. I mean, I've had parents talk about it for years and nobody's ever done it. And I'm like, dude, are you sure? And he's like, yep. And I'm like, all right. I mean, I got your back. Like, if you need to do this, I will get your back, but that's going to be interesting. But I was very clear to him too, that in my opinion, there is no way that you're going to get the pro bike. Like, these teams are too smart about this. I said, just so you know, you may not get a pro bike. You might, but I don't think the team would ever bring anything out that, they'd be willing to lose. That's why they don't bring the coated fork tubes, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of the history of how we initially got into it. And then how I think that this whole process got, the ball rolling.
Well, and when you say you were going to get his back, what did you mean by that?
Well, I feel like if you're in my corner, right? If you're one of my guys and you get protested, or I see somebody cut the track and you're one of my guys, I'm going to bring that forth. Like, hey, we need to go protest so-and-so. They cut the track. They didn't follow a rule. Or if you're convinced that somebody's got a cheater motor and you want to go protest them and you're one of my clients, I will go up there and advocate for you. If you want me to be there during that protest process and make me look at the parts, make sure that I think that they're legal or point out anything that's illegal, I will have your back. If you're one of my guys, I've always been loyal to my guys. I've got your back. Now, I didn't think I would get really wrapped up into this. Like, I had just said, hey, this is what's going on. Yeah, when he told me that he'd do it, I said, hey, I got your back. If you have any questions, I got your back. How I got dragged into it after that was kind of happenstance. And in hindsight, I kind of, I'm not going to say regret, but I definitely had no idea really what was going to happen from there. Because I imagined, okay, he's going to do the claim. Him and his dad are going to go take care of this. And if they want me to go along, I'll just be along or whatever. But it didn't end up working that way. And I ended up really advocating for that kid when the claim did go down and try to make sure that he got what he paid for.
That's fair. Did you have any intentions whatsoever of opening up that motor and taking a look? Because being their motor guy, I would assume at some point when they need a rebuild, they'd probably send it to you, right?
That's a great question as far as what they sent it to me. I don't know. You'd have to ask Brennan, but it never came up to me. I never asked about it. I never commented about it. And frankly, going into the deal, as I told him, I was like, dude, I don't think you're going to get anything that special. So no, on my end, no, zero intention on that. And had they sent it to me and said, hey, would you look at it? Sure, I probably would. But at the same time, that's also an area that I know, if it had been a full factory motor, is an area I don't want to touch. Like, I'm smart enough to know that that's just not, that would be stupid of me to go piss off, kick a hornet's nest at factory Star Racing, Yamaha, and whatever. And then on top of that, imagine, let's just say it was a full pro motor, which I still don't think it was, but let's say it was kind of unique or really cool. Well, how do you put it back together if it's got stuff that, you don't own, right? So that's an area of which I don't even think it'd be make sense for me. Now, to be honest, if he said, hey, I'd love to come down to your shop and dyno that bike, now I would do that in a heartbeat. You want to throw it on the dyno and put it up on YouTube? I'm all about that. That's fine by me. I would definitely do that. But to get into that motor, man, that's kicking a hornet's nest that I had no desire to kick.
So there was no intention. No, you didn't put up any money. You had nothing to do with mapping the motor, doing a spec motor, and just copying it for your benefit. None of that's true. Is that all made up?
That's complete made up. I had no intentions here, no money involved. This is not my deal, right? And on top of that, I've had time to think after this. Obviously, I've been thrown into it now because I was up there and involved. And I can see that angle, right? It might be a smart angle to play if you're trying to get some specs for motors, but I'm a pretty small shop. I'm the one-man band here. I do have some help who helps me tear down things and clean the shop. But as far as it comes to performance and porting and building, and frankly, I'm not made of money. Like, I don't even have a truck right now. My truck caught on fire 6 months ago, and I haven't even got it back from insurance yet. Like that, I don't have, I'm not made of money. So let's say I wanted to copy it. It would probably take me, because we do custom parts. Like, I've got some really cool custom parts we do for some of our clients. Like, I have titanium con rods that have won 2 Loretta's championships the last 2 years. That was like a 6-year process. And it cost a shitload of money for me to get that going out of my pocketbook, but we're talking like 10, 15 grand there for those, right? And then we sell a little bit of here and there, and for elite guys and people who want to spend that kind of money. But that took a long time for me to get done. Or I had custom pistons made for some KTM outlaw parts we do. And I just got those when I was at Loretta's. They showed up to the shop. It took me a year to get those pistons. So let's say I try to copy the Star motor. When could I sell it? Like, it would take me 6 to 8 months to get anything put together for whatever is cool about it. And it'd be a huge amount of money. Let's say it's a crank and a cam and a piece and a billet this, and that's reworked. You'd probably be into it for 100 or 200 or maybe even 300 grand to get production ready parts together. And I hate to say it, I wish I could say better. I just don't have that kind of cash. Like, it's just not even a possibility for me to even come close to that.
So you're not like the Yoshimura R&D facility where you could turn around 2 weeks. You're working out of a small shop, and it's not even possible if it was your plan.
No, it's not. For me, it's not even possible. I don't have the resources. I have a manual lathe at the shop. I have a local machinist I use for his milling machine and stuff like that, but it's not CNC. And we outsource every single part that I need to get made, which is true of like even Pro Circuit, right? They outsource pistons and they outsource a lot of pieces. So for me personally, and I have tried, like I said, I have some other custom pieces we have done. It costs me a fortune and it takes forever, especially since COVID. I mean, there's just no way maybe I would learn something, right? But at the end of the day, for me to monetize that, and then on top of that, who's going to go buy a $30 or $40 or $50,000 engine of which you probably need to sell it for? There's a limited handful of people that would maybe do that. But in amateur racing, we have a hard enough time trying to sell a $5,000 to $10,000 package. Like, that's hard to sell. So at the end of the day, maybe you got 5 or 6 or 7 clients who really think that their kid is one motor away from a championship. But at the end of the day, it's just never been my business. Like, we just have never been able to sell. Like, I'm not a consulting company that says, hey, give me 200 grand and I'll build your motor, as fast as we can build it in 6 months from now. So we've always had to just kind of, find our little niche space in the industry. And that niche space on 4-strokes is the best we can do with the resources we have, which is what most shops do. But yeah, I don't even think I could sell the motor if I had it. So it'd probably just be a museum piece if they were to give it to me.
Yeah. And let's not forget though, your stuff. Your guy, Caden Braswell, had a fast bike and won the 250 class and got second in the open pro sport. So clearly you do have a considerable amount of knowledge in motors.
Well, thank you very much. I think we're one of the best, at least at the amateur level. But again, unless somebody wants to pay me a salary, work on one motorcycle for 6 years or 7 years or 8 years in a row, to compete with a team that does have that resource is just tough. I tell that to my clients all the time. I can build you a pro bike that's for sure a 10th place bike. We've done it. If you're really special, you can put it between 10 and 5. But there's absolutely no way I'm going to compete with factory Honda or HRC unless you want to pay me like they would pay their guys. I mean, think about it. Star has a motor guy, maybe 2 or 3 now, and they're on salary, and they've been on that salary for 10 or 12 years with huge parts resource, right? So, man, like to compete with that program is it's just impossible realistically, unless you have huge deep pockets. But thank you for the compliment. You know, we do the best we can, and you know, we've been fortunate. I think we've got 7 titles since 2017. We got Super Mini 1 and 2 with Ty Masterpool. We got Schoolboy 2 with Caden Braswell last year. We got 250A this year with Caden, and we've gotten 3 C titles, or 3 C titles, which, they're C titles. But those people pay me for their motors. I don't pay them to go racing.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Now, I want to go back to a couple of the disputed facts in the situation. So one of the disputed facts was Tim Cotter and Brian Deegan pulling Brennan into a room by himself. Davey Coombs claims there was an AMA official and he was in there. Can you speak to any of that? Did you see any of that go down?
Yeah, so I think that the truth lies in the middle of all of that. So we were all in the office when the initial claim happens. And there's another individual with me who was just with us on the golf cart. And took the AMA at least 10 minutes to get together, like, what's going on? How are they going to handle this? You know, what's the money situation? What bike is he racing? Is he racing it in the other class? Which is really what the big issue was, right? If he'd been racing 2 bikes, that bike should have been in Brennan's pickup truck right then and there. Excuse me, I caught sick at Loretta's. I'm just getting over it. So they get that together. It's about 10 minutes. And then after they send an AMA guy down there, but the other ones are in the office. After that happens, they send all the AMA crew down because now I think they've made the decision, okay, we have to protect this bike and not allow them to mess with it. At that point in time, Tim Cotter gets involved, and me and Brendan are outside the office at this point, and they've already counted the cash and the claim's done. And we're outside thinking, all right, we're out. You know, this is done. And Tim comes over and he's talking to Brennan and myself, and we're really heated. Like, and in hindsight, it was probably a mistake on how hard I was hammering on Tim. Because I'm like, Tim, you have to do the right thing. This kid worked hard for this. This kid put his balls on the line. This kid needs that motorcycle the way it was raced. He wants the bike that he raced against. He doesn't want the bike that they want to give him. And Tim is like, this is not fair to Hayden Deegan. And I'm like, fair to Hayden Deegan? What are you talking about? Like, this is BS. This is not fair to Brennan. Like, he claimed this bike. That bike should be his. So we're going back and forth pretty hard. Brennan's going back and forth with them. And at one point, I had told Tim, like, I was like, we got into the spirit of the rule and what the rule was about and what the AMA guys had said it was about. And I'm like, look, Tim, if he doesn't get that exact motorcycle, I said, we're going to have to get litigious with this, which is a complete, to be honest with you, false claim. I'm not a lawyer and I don't have the money to go get a lawyer. And I wouldn't even think you could do a legal thing over this. But Tim was like, oh, really? You know, and I have to say, this is an intimidating man. He is big. He's got a deep voice. He's super, super smart. Like, he's quick on his feet. I mean, he was throwing blows at me and I'm like, oh man, like, this guy's really smart. So I can see why he has the job that he has. Like, he's very, very smart individual. And then that's the point where he says, this conversation is over. You wait out here. And he points to me. And so I wait outside, and then he took Brennan in the office. That probably took like what, 2 or 3 minutes for that conversation, you know, back and forth. So he takes Brennan in, and the AMA guys are down at the Deegan's pits. And so I'm sitting in the golf cart. I'm waiting there, and Brennan's in there all by himself. Nobody, you know, nobody around him that's part of anything that we know.
So it's just Tim and Brennan.
For Tim and Brennan when they first go in.
Okay.
And then I'm just sitting in the golf cart just waiting. And I'm waiting for a while. I was sweating. It was hot, and just sitting there waiting. And then the other individual that was with us is also in the golf cart with me. And we're sitting there waiting and waiting. And then up walks Brian Deegan. And he walks and goes into the office. And that's what I see. So I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. And I'd say Brennan was in there for at least 10 minutes before Brian got there. I would say Brian was in the office for 10 to 15, somewhere around those lines. And then an AMA guy comes walking up back from the bike. And I'm like, hey, what's going on here? Like, that kid's in there all by himself. And I just watched Brian Deegan walk in there. And I had no idea what's going on, but why is that kid in there all by himself? This doesn't make any sense. And so he goes in the office, and I'd say within 15 seconds, Brandon walks out. So I would put the time frame where he's alone in the office with Tim Cotter and then Brian Deegan for a total of 20 to 25 minutes. And I actually asked my friend who was there with me, I said, hey man, am I crazy about this? And he said, no, that was easily that time frame. So I think I did read the Racer X article. 5 minutes is a complete fabrication, but DC wrote that. I bet if Tim Cotter were to officially put his position on it, he would probably agree at minimum 15 to 20. And I think it was 20 to 25. So maybe it was 20.
Okay. And then where was Brennan's parents at this point?
So that's where I got involved. Like, that's how I ended up in this crap hole to begin with. So I knew what was going on. And as I mentioned to him, if you need my support, whatever. And then on top of that, I'm curious. I mean, this is like a rule that my entire career, I've been in business now for about 15 years. I'm 35 and I started my business around 20. I've never seen a claim go down. And we've all heard, like I had Sean Hackley telling me in the pits at Loretta's this year, you know, one of the dads had brought up, like, what do you know about claiming? And and Sean was just like, you'll never get that bike. Those factories are not ever going to let that happen. The AMA, whoever's going to screw you, you will never get it. So I'm like really curious, you know, I'm like, hey, I want to go get the popcorn out and I want to see what happens. I want to be a witness for this. If this kid gets screwed, then we need to put that story out. So I go to the pits after his last moto. And again, also he rode great, by the way. Brennan's a really good rider. So I watched his whole moto and it's like, oh man, he rode good. Go to his pits, gonna go see what happens. And I'm like, hey, you still doing it? He's like, yep. I'm like, okay, well, you know, you're about 10 minutes after that moto already. You're 10 minutes away from, you know, the AMA. Like, where's your dad? And he's like, dude, I don't know. I can't find him. I'm like, dude, well, what are you talking about? Like, you need to be ready to go. And he's like, I know. And I'm like, okay, well, I said, well, I'll go with you if you need me to go. And he's like, all right, we got no time. Let's go. So we loaded up and went. And that's really where that kicked off on that for me and him. At that point, I felt responsible for that kid.
Yeah, that's reasonable on why his dad wasn't there. So now
we asked him after the fact, and he was just like, dude, I was walking back from the moto and I totally forgot, which I cannot believe. I think it just like the time frame snuck up on him. Like 30 minutes after a moto, when you finish, you talk to your guy. I don't think Brennan has his dad as his mechanic. So like he had another kid. So you ride back, you pick up your mechanic. You know, when I got to the pits, he had just gotten his jersey off, his stuff off, and he's sweating. And he was like, and it's already, you know, at least 10 minutes after the moto. You know what I mean? And you know how big Loretta's is. Like I was on the far side of the racetrack. It took me all of that 10 minutes to get my golf cart from there all the way back around to his pits, you know? So at the end of the day, I think just the time frame snuck up on everybody.
Yeah. And now, okay, so the claim's all over. They're holding the bike. They're going to do the whole, you know, give it to him the next day after the moto. What happened in the evening? How did that happen? And I know you were threatened and some other stuff. You talk about as much of that as you want. So
yeah, so I was really not sure what I wanted to say on this. It's actually why we haven't talked, you know, publicly earlier. And I just, you know, in the heat of the battle, quote unquote, people do things that are, you know, we're men, right? So at the end of the day, so basically I did need to do some bike work for the Brit. So if you own a Yamaha and it's a mod Yamaha, you probably know that you need to change timing chains constantly. It's like just a weak link in the motorcycle right now. So Brennan was going to Canada after the fact. And his dad's like, hey, during the week we had done one, right? So he did 3 motos, we did one, and then he did 3 more. So I'm doing some maintenance on the bike. And he's also got a really cool ECU setup from us and whatnot. We're doing some testing and tuning and trying to get that together for him better. I'm always improving, right? Like all the time. So if we can learn, Loretta's is the best proving ground there is. So I'm over in the pits later that night. After the claim, I went back to my pits, cooled off. Like I was heated, man. Just like this whole thing just happened. Go back to his pits, go to start doing this bike work. And then he's like, hey, I got a message. You want to roll up with us? And now the dad's there, of course. The AMA office. They said, come on up. So I said, sure. You know, I'll get the popcorn out. Go up there and I'm sitting in the golf cart. They go up to the AMA office and they're there for about 5 minutes max. I think they waited outside for a couple. They go inside, maybe inside for a minute, and they come out and they're smiles. Like they're all smiles. And so I'm like, man, what happened? Because I was thinking for sure they're going to get screwed out of this deal one way or another. They're going to come back and the AMA is going to be like, well, this happened or that happened or whatever, and you're not going to get this deal. So they come back all smiles. And I'm like, what happened? So of course I wasn't in there, but they told me, the AMA told them that the bike was impounded and it was in one of the AMA guys' trailer that night. Everything had been stickered. That Star had already said, oh, we're probably going to have to swap a motor if we see anything in the oil change, you know, yada, yada, yada. And the AMA had told them that's fine. Change a motor, but that motor stays with the AMA and goes to Brennan. And he gets to keep what comes off the track. So that's what is all said. They're all smiles. And at this point, I'm like, all right, like this claim's over with. They also had mentioned, that they would give it back to the guys before the race, but that an AMA official would have to stay with the bike the entire time that they had the motorcycle, and they weren't going to let Star touch it with a laptop or do anything like that. So AMA did I was impressed. They really, really, really had thought that through at that point. So I'm like, all right, claim's done. We're just washed fingers, see what happens tomorrow. We're done. Like, I'm like, hey, you want to go by Caden Brazel's pit? He had just won the 250A championship. And I had brought that up earlier in the week, unrelated to any of this. I'm like, hey, you want to go meet the kid? Maybe if you go to Florida and get a chance to train out there, he'll let you ride with him. And he's got an awesome trainer. His name's Justin Boyd. And I said, you need to meet him, because Brennan had expressed to me earlier in the week, I'd asked him how training was going. He's like, man, it's good, but I'd love to travel the US and train in more places and ride different tracks. And at the time I said, hey, Caden's guy's good. Like, you should meet him. He's like, okay. So we go by the pits and they're not there, which is really close to where Moto X was. It's in the pro, like whatever you call the main pavement area of Loretta's.
And Moto X is Matt Walker's compound.
That's correct. Moto X is Matt Walker's. And I've never really met Matt. I've seen him around in a bunch of races over the years, but I know who he is. I could, recognize him, but never met him. So we're in the golf cart. We go do that. The dad's with us and everything. And then he gets a message and he's like, hey, Moto X wants me to stop by. Matt said to come by. So I'm like, well, whatever. I mean, I'm riding their golf cart and I'm a mile away from their pit, and you know what I mean? So I'm basically along for the ride. And they go into the pits. We all go in there and we walk underneath. It's dark-ish now. It's like really late dusk. I'd say 9 or whatever time that is. Walk in there. There's no lights on. And sitting in a chair is Matt Walker. And then across from Matt Walker in front of him, like you to me would be if this was in person, is a guy in a Yamaha shirt. Now, I'm not familiar with all of Yamaha staffing, but Matt said, hey, this is Donnie Lucci, but he never said anything. And then he said, sit down. And so we all sit down. And then started kind of what I would say was really the drama of the week. I would say this is where the real drama happened.
Okay. Did you want to elaborate or just leave it at that? It's up to you, man.
Yeah, I'll talk about it. I thought about it all week. And so I'll talk about it. And I don't want anybody to think that I'm talking negatively of Matt. Everybody has their own motivations, and we couldn't possibly know all the motivations that Matt has involved with this. Maybe he had Brennan's best interest at heart. Maybe he truly did. Right?
I'll say this. I talked to Matt. I do believe Matt's a good guy. I do believe he was embarrassed of his actions. I do believe he has some different motivations, and he was trying to just keep the peace with everybody the best he knew how. Did he go about it the right way? Nah. Did he make some mistakes? Yeah. But I know this. I know I feel pretty bad about it. So.
Right. And if I ever get to see him in person, I will personally apologize to him for just being involved in at all. So I don't think I did anything wrong personally, to be frank. However, things got really, really nasty in a hurry. So basically, Matt's pressuring on the kid to just not do this. And he's saying all the reasons you shouldn't do it. And they're very legitimate reasons. I can totally see what he's saying. Like, this is going to hurt your name. It's going to hurt you with Yamaha, all of these things. And then it's going to hurt Matt a little bit, his image and the fact that his kid's associated. All of these things are coming up, but he's really pressuring the kid. And the Yamaha guy's really quiet. And so he's not saying a word, which is kind of odd to me. Like, basically, like Matt's talking for him. Now, I think they thought that because of Matt's influence on the kid, they could just instantly get him to drop this. And I think Brennan was just of solid resolve. Like, he's like, nope, I want that bike. It's in the rule book. I read the rules. Holy crap. And that's what he kept maintaining. Like, I have done nothing wrong. And Matt's just kind of going on him. And to me, it was very, very heavy pressure. I mean, I'm talking like pretty aggressive. And to me, like, if I were in that position, I'd feel like I'm going to say bullied. That's not maybe the right exact word, but
a little intimidated.
Very intimidated, right? I was intimidated, and I'm not even involved with that. Like, I'm just sitting here like, man, this is Matt Walker. This is some guy in a Yamaha shirt. Like, this is the real deal. Finally, the Yamaha guy speaks up, and he says, look, Brennan, and it's an appeal to your emotions, your appeal to your logic. And he goes, look, we've got a lot of time, and we've got a lot of technology wrapped up in that bike, and we just flat out can't let it out. We can't let it get open. And Brennan is like, well, did you not read the rule book? He's like, well, we know, did you not know it's a rule? And he's like, yeah, we knew it's a rule, but we really just, can't have that opened. And then he points to me and says, that guy right there is going to open that, and we can't allow that to happen. And at that point, I stuck my hand out straight to Donnie Lucci and said, look, I promise I will not open that motorcycle, and stuck it straight to him. And he ignored me, like didn't even look at me. And I'm like, what is the deal here? Like, I'm doing all I can to make sure that I'm not involved with that. But Brennan's here saying he wants to stick with the claim. Like, if that's all you guys want is to know that I will not open the engine, I will promise that to you. That's not a thing to me. Like, I don't care.
If they had said, will you sign an affidavit that says you won't, would you have?
100%.
Done.
100%. This is not for me anything involved in that. And I totally get why they're in that position. Now, granted, I never imagined going in that they would have brought something they didn't want out, but I'm on board with that. Like, if Brennan wants to claim his bike and prove that the rule works to him and get a freaking sweet bike that he gets to ride and just see what the bike's like for him, and if that's the only hurdle that they have, I will sign that. Like, that's Brennan's deal. He wants this motorcycle. That's 100% fine by me. So I tried my best and they ignored that. And then I'm not going to say who or what, but someone else comes in really hot and just yelling at Brennan and yelling at his dad. And I'm talking like hot, jamming the finger, like that whole kind of deal. And that's when things went just really bad in a hurry. So that happened.
Was this somebody affiliated with any? Can you just tell us who the guy's affiliated or representing?
It's.
You don't have to say who it was.
He's representing himself and his interests. And Brennan left him out. And I feel like I should leave him out.
That's fine.
Because Brennan left him out. But I'll say that he knows the Brennans very well. He knows Matt very well.
Oh, okay. I know who it is. Okay.
Okay.
It may have been a Yamaha dealer.
Okay. So no comment. He and the dad leave. He's like, we got to have a talk after this. And, all this stuff. So dad's like, well, let's go have a talk. So the dad leave the tent and they're talking. And now things are crickets. I'm just sitting there in a chair next to Matt Walker. Like, literally, I could stick my hand out and touch him. Like, he's right there. Donnie Lucci's on my right, same thing. And if I lean forward, I could touch Brennan. We're like in a circle. And it's quiet. And so I'm sitting there and like, I don't know. I shouldn't have even said anything, but I turned to Matt and I was like, hey, Matt, how's business going? And he explodes on me. Gets up. I'm going to beat your ass, yelling at me and like all up in my face. I get up, I'm backing up. Brennan gets out of the chair. Is like, whoa, what are you doing, Matt? He didn't say anything. And Matt's like, you're a smug piece of, you know what? And he's all up in my face. I'm going to whoop your ass. And he's like looking serious. Like, I was for about, that split second, I'm like, I'm just about to get my jaw broke. Like, he seems really serious about this. And he's way up in my face. And I'm backing up. I'm backpedaling. I'm not much of a fighter. I don't want to be much of a fighter. And I don't want to be in controversy like this. So I'm like backpedaling. And then I realized there's no way he can hit me. If he hits me, this conversation's over. If he hits me, his ass is grass. Like, I would prosecute. Like, I have no, you can't do that to somebody. You don't just go beat the shit out of somebody for no reason. It's unacceptable. It's unprofessional and totally unacceptable. And then I'm thinking to myself, here's a Yamaha guy right there. What is he doing in this? So I like look over and he's not doing shit. He ain't saying anything. He's not telling Matt to back off. He's not saying, hey, back off, Matt. This is not okay. He's just quiet. And I'm like, in my head, it kind of clicked. He didn't tell Matt to do this, but this is desirable for him. So I realized that Matt probably can't hit me, and I stopped backpedaling. And I'm like, Matt, then hit me. And Matt backed off. To his credit, he didn't. And to his credit, he showed good restraint there. But you could, now your adrenaline's up. I'm like, just, adrenaline's maxed out. You know what I mean? Like, that fight or flight thing's really kicked in. And I'm like, just, oh man, like, what's going on here? So then Brennan stands up and we're like, we're out of here. Like, we're leaving. This conversation is over. This is not acceptable. Like, we're out. And we start walking out. And then the dad comes running in because he had heard, I'm sure I didn't ask him, but he had heard what had happened. And he's here to, like, maybe make the peace or see what's going on, support his kid, make sure his kid's not getting his ass beat. And he walks in there and then Matt goes off on me again. You need to get out of my pits and I'm going to beat your ass and yada, yada, yada. So I left. I mean, he requested that I leave. That's his space. I have no right to be there. And this isn't my claim. So I'm out. So I walked out and I left. And I expected the Schofields to walk out, but then the dad, I could hear him say, hey, sit down, Brennan, we got to talk. And so I leave. And then that's the end of my, my whole involvement or what I saw and could attest to. And then the next thing I know, the next day, so I didn't get the bike work done. I had to make my long mile way back to my pits. And so the next day I have to go over to the Schofields because I didn't get the bike work done. So I go over there in the morning and I'm like, hey, we need to get this bike work done. And he's like, yeah, oh, you heard, right? And I'm like, heard what? And he's like, oh, well, we ended up dropping the claim. I'm like, oh, okay, well, what's going on there? And he told me and filled me in. And again, that's for their story to tell. But what he was told was some deals were struck, and there was some stuff that he was trying to, supposed to get. One of the big things that the Yamaha guy did say earlier on was, you just want to ride the bike, right? And so Brennan said yes. And so, to my understanding, and again, nothing's in writing, which is probably a huge mistake on everybody's part. But my understanding is that they did make an offer for him to get to ride that motorcycle or a comparable motorcycle, and then some other things. And so they dropped the claim.
Yeah, I was told 2 motors, but like I said, I can't find anyone that can verify that Yamaha actually said that heard it from Donnie Lucci or anything.
You there?
So yeah, can you hear me?
There.
Oh, can you hear me? Derek, can you hear me?
I've got good signal. You there?
Yeah, I'm here. Oh, mine's
okay. There
my,
you go.
yeah,
So
my internet sucks.
I was told the same. 2 motors and a chance to ride the motorcycle. They could fly him out to Florida, or they fly him out to California, and he'd get a chance to go ride the motorcycle, do some YouTube like he had mentioned he wanted to do. That's what I was told. Now, again, I wasn't there. I cannot confirm that in person, so that could just be hearsay or whatever they said. But personally, I don't think his dad or Brennan had anything to lie when they're telling me that. And at the time, I really don't think, even though the claim had been dropped, I don't think at the time they thought that it would go so negative, if that makes any sense. Like, all right, you know what? Cool. We got some motors. We're going to get to go ride the bike, which is what Brennan really wanted anyway. And yeah, you don't come home with the bike, but hey, you get to ride it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And for me, the whole situation, honestly, if they just given Brennan the bike, I think this thing would have been it would have been far less of a story. The cover up and what happened post claim, to me, is far worse for the industry, far worse for the sport, far worse for everyone involved. And that's what's the problem. Not necessarily that there's a claim. That's a rule. It's a rule. It's a rule. You broke it. You got caught. Your hands in the cookie jar. Give the bike up. So that's how I feel.
I think this shook up the industry a little bit. I hope that the teams maybe, the whole point of the rule is just to level the playing field a little bit, like plain and simple. You can build and bring anything you want to the ranch, but somebody might take it from you. Right. Yeah, and we know that too. Like, I don't put some stuff in engines that I don't want gone, like plain and simple. The tie rod thing, I was super secretive about for a little while. Like, I've had this product, like I said, in development for a long time. I'm just finally, because now I got the pricing down, willing to sell them. Right. So I agree. The rule's there for a great reason. And they should have just gave him the bike. And I think Brennan's intentions were pure. I don't think there'd have been any drama with Yamaha. Like, personally, I think he'd have rode the bike. And he even brought up, he's like, dude, I'll sell it back when I'm done with it. Like, I know this is Deegan's bike. It's his last. Loretta's probably, not confirmed, but I think that was confirmed. He was like, dude, I'll sell it back to him. Maybe I can do a YouTube with him and be like, hey, I'm sorry. I took your bike and I'll return it to you, and just invite me out there to ride. But that just never came to fruition because he never got the bike.
God, it couldn't have been handled worse. So,
yeah.
Well, Derek, I don't want to take too much more of your time. I appreciate you telling your side of the story. I'm sorry that you kind of got roped into it and blamed for some stuff that you clearly didn't do. Anything else you want to say on the topic?
Like I said, to Tim Cotter, I hammered on him initially, really hammered on him. And I had no idea his perspective. In hindsight, now I know his perspective. The rule needs amendments. This is not fair to Hayden Deegan. He said that, and he's right. If you're a racer and your bike is claimed and you got a race tomorrow, that really screws with your mind. And Hayden had a championship on the line, and he had something still to fight for. So somehow that rule should be amended in a way that allows no drama, if your bike got claimed. So I don't know how you'd fix it, but that's something that I would say. And now I actually see Tim's perspective. He's a promoter. There are eyeballs on those fence lines because I heard it. Like Loretta's is the busiest spectator I've ever seen it the last few years. And they're all there. The day goers and a lot of these people who make this trip are there to see Hayden Deegan. He has grown this sport. His YouTube's unbelievable. They're doing amazing things. So I see Tim's perspective now. He wanted Deegan to race, and I think he thought that was in question after the rule, because the rule says the bike is turned over immediately. And I know he had read the rules, so I'm thinking he's probably thinking, oh, man, like, this is a disaster. You know what I mean? So now I see his perspective, and now I see why he was hammered on me, hammered on Brennan. And, so, yeah, I would apologize to him and just say, look, man, I'm sorry I hammered on you. I did not see life through your viewpoint.
Yeah, but didn't he kind of lead you guys in the beginning to think he was an actual official, or did you guys know from Jump Street that he wasn't?
No idea. I know who he is, but the way that he portrayed it and the way that he acted like he was having say on what would happen with the motorcycle, like, oh no, yeah, he literally said, well, you'll get that frame. And I'm like, who wants the frame? Like, that's worthless, So, at first I was completely unclear. I ended up asking the AMA guy, like, hey, is he an AMA guy? Like, he's sure acting like it. Like, why does he have that kid in there? What's going on here? What say does he have on that? And the AMA guy's like, no. And then that's when when he came back, and I'm like, dude, that kid's in there with him and Brian Deegan walking that office. I'm assuming they're in there together. So yeah, but again, so I don't think that he comes out scotch clean on it. Obviously, the office thing to me is complete and utter horseshit. If I had one amendment to the rule, it would say if there's any tampering that goes on, the claimed person's bike gets DQ'd instantly. Just don't allow tampering. And if you write that in the rule book, boom, problem solved. You don't have any of this drama. You don't have any of this headaches. And if a claimant feels pressured, go to the AMA office, boom, you're out. And that would completely eliminate a lot of these headaches. So yeah, I don't, he doesn't come off scotch-free, but I do now see his perspective. And now that I've had a week to process about it, I was hard on him, very hard on him. I think he thought I was a lawyer for a little while. So he was, I think that I was hammering on him really hard.
Motor builder / lawyer. I see it.
Yeah.
You got the glasses, you got the look. I would be. If
I
you
was
threatened-
a nerd. Hey, but in a previous life, I almost didn't go this direction. So I was a nerd as a kid. I mean, I still am a nerd, but
I was dude, I'm still a freaking nerd. Come on, man.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt about it.
Yeah. But no, well, that's awesome. Well, hey, where can people find you if they want to get some motor work done?
Man, thank you for even asking. My website's hpracedevelopment.com, and my Instagram is @hpracedevelopment. We do have a YouTube channel I started up about a year ago. And if you want to see free dyno information on stock bikes and parts and pieces, that's what I throw up.
Yeah. So if you get your motor done, and you also get Derek as your personal bodyguard and escort for any bike claims. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. I'm just
That's so funny. Hey, I'm going to have to hit the gym if you make that true. So.
No, you have to hire security if you keep that up. So, okay.
Yeah,
awesome.
I think I'm out. Like, I got enough of a pile of this steaming stuff. If this happens again, I'm just literally going to watch from the sidelines. That's it.
Probably a good idea. Just build fast motors and support your guys morally back at their own pit, and you're good to go. So Derek, man, 100%. I appreciate your time. And I look forward to meeting you in person and seeing these rippers you keep building. So,
hey, thank you very much and have a wonderful day.